Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Devasisha Sunyavari Krishtatara Satarine Jai Sri
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda Shri
Shri
Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Hare
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so what I thought I would do first, before we begin, is just to have a objective look of where we are in the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani. So because I have the slides, so I have the different chapters. So now the reason for that is because we're discussing at the moment, sorry, make you a bit dizzy with the different slayers. We're actually discussing spontaneous devotional service, and we was on it last week, and also I think a little bit the week before. So I don't want to get the impression, or I don't want to give the impression that this presentation or what we're teaching here is just exclusively about spontaneous devotional service. It's not exclusively about that. It just so happens this is part of the process of devotional service that Maharaj is explaining. There's two aspects of practice. There's called Vaidhi, and the other one is called Raganuga Sadhan as well. So Maharaj is giving us he's expanding on that point. So, for example, we're here at the moment. We're on chapter 12, and we've been discussing spontaneous devotional service in practice, which has two aspects. There's the internal and the external. And then, if you remember, we discussed the specific activities of someone who is practicing spontaneous devotional service. There's some practices which they will do, some practices which they won't do. Some practices are neutral for the development of their specific taste. Some practices are to be avoided. So that kind of highlights, as one advances in spiritual life, there will be a different set of rules, if you want, or different way of practice. Of course, everyone follows the four regulative principles, but as one makes advancement in devotional service, there may be other principles which they may engage in. Yeah, and we're gonna the 5 stages of absorption. This is for someone who's at the stage of spontaneous devotional service. So we'll look at that and Lord Chaitanya's and spontaneous devotion. So that's what we're covering today. So chapter 13 is going to describe bhava, devotional service in ecstasy. Whenever ecstasy is written, it generally means a stage of bhava. Or whenever bhava is written, it means a stage of ecstasy. So this is Rupa Goswami divides devotional service into Vaidhi, Bhava, and Prema. So therefore, Maharaj is describing it like that. Then we're going to speak a little bit, and we can only speak possible to fully understand, but we will describe a little bit about devotional service in love of God. And then that finishes part 2. Then we got part 3, which is the different stages of devotion, the stages of pure devotion, based on the verse of Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion or Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu, different stages that devotees go through in their spiritual practice. So it begins with a semblance of pure devotion. And remember, we spoke about that in the very beginning chapters. So this again will be spoken about here because it's part of the sequence of taking up the path of pure devotion. So then we're going to speak about this as well. There comes Dhruva Maharaj. Unsteady devotional service. This may be more kind of good for us to relate to at our stage. Yeah. Unsteady devotional service. What are its characteristics, causes of unsteady devotion, etc. Then we're going to look at this. Anartha Nivriti. We're going to get into details about that. anartan and or specifically removing the anartas. And then we're going to speak about, then after that comes the speaking about nishta and speaking about ruchi, the different developments of devotion, and then from shakti to prema again. And that finishes part 4. So that's really an introduction to the book. Yeah. So all these, everything that we learn is specifically for ascertaining our qualification for hearing Krishna's pastimes and what type of pastimes. That is the main thrust of Suddha Bhakti Cintamani. So first Maharaj, he elaborately speaks about the different stages of devotion. Then he's based on that, what's one's adhikar to hear Krishna's pastimes. Because remember, this book comes as an introduction to his Krishna in Vrindavan series, which is all about Krishna's pastimes. So devotees, they were asking questions of, can I read this book? Can I read that book? And therefore Maharaj wrote Suddha Bhakti Chintamani. So then that is the subject then on thereafter, the qualifications to hear, etc. Okay, principles of hearing, hearing without faith, hearing with impure faith, goes quite into some detail, hearing at unsteady devotion, etc. There was unsteady worship of the name, like that. Okay, so just to give you an idea of where we are and where we're going. Did that help? Hopefully that's helped devotees. In other words, we're not just speaking. These classes are not just about spontaneous devotional service, okay? Of course, those here know that, but if you happen to be listening to a recording and we're speaking about this subject, it just happens to be um, what Maharaj is speaking of presently. Okay, so any questions? It's okay, we're all clear. Okay. So we've discussed this two aspects of spontaneous devotional service. What's the two aspects of spontaneous devotional service? Anyone can remember?
Was it internal or external
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
specific?
Can you tell us what the external is?
Um, I think the external was uh, generally the same as Invaidi, but it's also containing specific hearing and of specific pastimes. I think that was part of it.
Yeah, more or less external. One's going to follow, say, for instance, one is inspired by Rupa Manjari. They're going to follow the service of Rupa Goswami in his sadhak form. So, in other words, devotees who have spontaneous attraction, just as Balai Nimai said, that they will engage in the activities of the mission of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. But internally, they'll be developing their specific mood of attraction to the residents of Vrindavan. So just like Rupa Goswami was very busy in building temples and organizing the activities in Vrindavan, but internally, he was absorbed in his meditation upon Radha and Krishna. So it's two aspects, external and internal. Then we spoke a little bit about this. Pseudo devotees, those who proclaim, those who are very much confused, and they think that by externally dressing as a gopi, then that's their sadhana for becoming a gopi. Okay, we need not say much more about that. Okay. And then Prabhupada spoke about the Siddhapanadi process. We spoke about it briefly. It will come up later as well. And then we got into some details about the practice of spontaneous devotional service. And we left it off here last week. Okay. And the point we left off is that if someone is blessed to be on this stage of devotional practice, yeah, then they should keep in mind that they should set the proper example for others, especially in our international society for Krishna consciousness. Yeah, they will still engage in the service of the mission. Okay, so otherwise, if these advanced devotees neglect the basic practices of Krishna consciousness or the basic program of Krishna consciousness, then there could be double standards in our society. So everyone, for instance, follows the general what we know as a program in the temples, our morning program, or you may have your own program at home where you listen to Srimad Bhagavatam class and taking part in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Okay. And then we're picking up from here. Okay. All right. So now this is this verse was paraphrased. This is from the Nectar of Instruction. It's the verse 8. And it has a very interesting purport. And the next 3 slides or 4 slides are going to be going to be elaborating on the purport that Prabhupada gives for this verse. Okay. So yeah, this is more detail of how spontaneous practitioners, they more details, of how they engage in services rendered by the residents of Vrindavan, who they've captured in their heart. Okay, this is spontaneous practice. Okay, but devotees is something we need to do even at our stage. Basically, but definitely at this stage, devotees, they, as you can see in the verse here, that they reside in the transcendental realm of Raj. So that may not be possible for most devotees. So therefore, generally, such devotees will practice living there mentally. So even living there mentally, that fulfills Rupa Goswami's instructions to practice spontaneous devotional service, because that is required. So at least mentally, you have to be in the mood of Vrindavan. That okay, so how to do that? Yeah. So one is at least we should visit Vrindavan and we have a certain impression of Vrindavan or the holy dhams. Another is to make our home just like Vrindavan and a place where we reside, or like a temple is Vrindavan. Prabhupada said a temple is transcendental and it's just like Vrindavan. Yeah, where only service of Krishna is in the forefront of everyone's mind and consciousness. Yeah. So, in other words, it is possible to practice spontaneous devotional service anywhere in the world with this mindset. Yeah. So, specifically, how do these devotees remember Krishna and his associates? Now, one thing to keep in mind is that um, this cannot be an artificial practice. Yeah, we may try to do this to be absorbed in remembrance of Krishna's form, qualities, and pastimes, but actually, it cannot be done artificially. It requires, Maharaj mentions 2 things: purity of heart and suitable knowledge. Now, purity of heart doesn't come about at the flick of a switch. It comes about by ardent practice over a long period of time, or a period of time. Like hopefully we have experienced that on taking up Krishna consciousness, especially if we're practicing nicely and we're chanting attentively, there should be some acknowledgement of some purity of heart. Okay, not completely pure, but our tendencies should have changed. Like we are not attracted to the things that we used to be attracted to before we took up Krishna consciousness. Hopefully. Yeah. We don't like to listen to the things we used to listen to before we took up Krishna consciousness. We don't like to eat the things we used to eat before we took up Krishna consciousness. And that's a good sign. That means there's some purity of heart. Yeah, one's more attracted to a, yeah, one's attracted to following the regulative principles. Although the ghost of past attachment may still be haunting us, but we're following a pure lifestyle. Yeah, so that's good. That's what it takes. And that eventually that purity will give us the adhikar to meditate upon Krishna. Yeah, so it requires purity of heart. I guess has some of you ever tried where you're chanting Hare Krishna and you try to think of Krishna? We can do that, it's good. But for a few seconds, we may focus our mind on Krishna's lotus feet. You know, some of you may be able to do it for more time, you may be more accomplished. But generally, because we don't have that purity of heart, it's difficult. And we'll explain a bit more about that today. Okay, so two things for someone at this stage is they need to have purity of heart. That's why this practice of Raganuga devotion or Raganuga is not really possible for those unless they've achieved the stage of anartha-nivritti. If they're trying to do it before that stage, it's just artificial. Yeah, if they've still got mundane attraction and they're still distracted by sensual things, etc., 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 then their practice is artificial. Yeah, so purity of heart is needed, and also suitable knowledge. Um, Purity of heart makes the mind peaceful when one can enter into thoughts of Vrindavan. And knowledge specifically of the Rajrasis, their pastimes and features and their qualities. That provides a subject matter to immerse the mind. Okay, so such devotees at this stage, their sadhana will require that they hear substantially about Krishna's pastimes, his features, qualities, etc. Yeah, and that's in Nectar of Devotion. You'll find Rupa Goswami speaks about 64 qualities of Krishna. So suitable devotees can absorb their minds in Krishna's qualities, for example. So in other words, it's not doesn't just come out of the sky. It can do, no doubt, the pure holy name can reveal everything. But for those who are at this stage, they have purity of heart and they have the qualification, then they're going to hear about, they're going to spend time hearing about Krishna's pastimes, etc., because that will give them the knowledge by which they can immerse their peaceful mind. Okay? Any questions on that?
Yes, bro.
Well,
A
anyway,
question.
yeah,
So, when we're speaking about artificial remembrance of
yeah,
Krishna and Krishna's, in Vrindavan, is it like is that referring to like prolonged remembrance? Because as you
yes.
were saying, like someone in the neophyte stage would be recommended to also think of Krishna and Vrindavan as well.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, this is for like Asta Kaliya Leela Smaran, where one is meditate upon Krishna's unfolding pastimes throughout the day
Right.
while they're engaged in Harinam. Yeah. So that would be not recommended for someone who's not at this, who's not achieved the requisite level of purity. But we should be we should be thinking of Krishna, as you said. Yeah, when we're chanting a holy name, there's no harm in thinking of the deity, trying to focus our mind. That may be your practice on Krishna's lotus feet. But as far as like a specific practice, which then you take up as a daily sadhana to meditate upon Krishna in detail, that takes purity of heart. Yeah. But that purity of heart comes from thinking about Krishna in general and practicing the activities of bhakti. Yeah. Is that okay,
Yeah,
Balanimas?
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you.
that clarification. That question is good, clarified. Yeah. Okay. Oh, did we? Yeah. Let's just read this verse. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Raj and always engage in Krishna smaram janam tasya prashtam. the remembrance of Krishna and his beloved. So this is Raganuga Sadhan, okay? The remembrance of Sri Krishna and his beloved associates by following in the footsteps of such associates and by entering under their eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so that's verse 8, which speaks about, it's not speaking about Vaidhi Bhakti, okay? Speaking about more Raganuga Sadhan, all right? That's, okay. Now, in this regard, Srila Prabhupada was often, he would quote this often by Nortam Das Thakur, yeah. Vishayacharya Kabi Shuddha Habiman, He Kabi Hema Harabo Shri Vrindavan. Beautiful bhajan by Nortam Das Thakur. So I read it here. When the mind is completely purified, remember? The mind is completely purified. So we're beyond the anusmrti again. Being freed from material anxieties and desires. So again, material attachment. Then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan and the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna. And then my spiritual life will be successful. Yeah. So Norton is very clearly explaining the process. Yeah. Then also it follows on. Rupa Ragana Pada Hobi Akoti Kaba Hema Pujabo Se Jugara Priti. When will I be very much eager to study the books left by the Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami? By their instructions, I shall properly understand the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. All right. So this is the mood of a advanced devotee, but also this should be our mood as well. When, oh, when will I be purified enough that I can absorb, I can pick up my beads and be absorbed in Krishna's name, form, qualities and pastimes for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 64 rounds if we have an opportunity on some occasions. When, oh, when? So that's good. Okay, we may not be at this stage, but we should hanker for. Norton is showing us that he is hankering, so we should hanker. Okay, it'd be different type of intensity of hankering. Do you remember that discussions we had on greed? Yeah. So at least we've got to start somewhere. Yeah. So again, we must be first free from material contamination. Then we can practice a step by step of this process that Rupa Goswami is outlining. Yeah. And so when the mind is purified, and the knowledge of Vrindavan comes from, specifically, it comes from Srimad Bhagavatam, but also the more detail is given in the books of the Goswamis. That's why it's said here. When will I be eager to study the books of the Goswamis? Then one can understand the details of Raj. Yeah, I mean the books are there. They're there for us to read, but a specific stage of spiritual attainment and under guidance of our mentors. Yeah. Okay. Now then, on the practice, how does it develop for such a accomplished devotee? Well, this attraction, it develops in stages. Okay, so for someone who's accomplished, first, there's going to be a general attraction for a particular mood of devotion. We have parental friendship or conjugal love. Okay, there'll be a general attraction for one of these will begin to manifest. Yeah. Then that will become more specific as devotees advance further. They become attracted to devotees who render service in that particular mood. Okay, so they're attracted to the pastime of the cowherd boys, yeah, Sakyaras. Then they become attracted to a specific friend of Krishna. It becomes quite specific. Yeah. to Pacific, and then they become, once that's matured, again, they're Pacific attraction to a Rajrasi. Yeah. Okay, well, just this is an insight to hopefully future coming attractions in our devotional development. Okay, and it's all up to us, really. It's up to how attentive we are in chanting the holy name and in the process of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And these things can be experienced even in this life. Yeah. But it's up to us. We have to do the work. So the main work that we can do as sadhakas is to learn to be attentive. Because from that, everything will happen. If we can be attentive to the holy name, yeah, and we can be attentive to the Srimad Bhagavatam, yeah, then hopefully this will be very relevant to us at some point in our devotional development. Yeah. Okay, so then when devotees then they they come to the stage of bhava bhakti, which we're describing today, if we get there. When the stage of bhava, they're no longer at the stage of practice. Yeah. So at that stage, the revelations coming from the spiritual realm. So you follow this, it will confirm or modify their burgeoning spiritual identity. Okay. It's a good job. I'm just in the beginning, I mentioned that we're not just speaking about spontaneous devotional service. The whole course is not about that, the whole book, but it just so happens this is what is presently being spoken about. So anyway, all right. So it confirms or modifies one's spiritual identity, because what that basically means that at the stage of Raganuga Sadhana, at the stages before Bhava, one is a conditioned soul. One is subject to make mistakes. So the meditation and attraction that one has developed along their path to a specific relationship with Krishna, it may get confirmed at the stage of perfection, or it may need modifying. You follow? Do you remember that verse that describes again in the Nectar of Instruction that this stage or this practice of Raganuga Sadhana is practice at those in the stage of bondage and also those at the stage of liberation. So that stage of bondage is those who haven't reached bhava, but they're meditating on the specific service to Krishna. Now, when they reach bhava, which is a stage of perfection, they may confirm or modify that specific attraction of the person they are following. Yeah. Now, yes. Any questions? Yes. Now, what's being pointed out here is that at this stage of devotional practice, the internals are very, very important. So in this sense, the mind, it plays an essential role in Smarana, and therefore an essential role in spontaneous practice. Yeah. So genuine ragatmaka, or excuse me, raganuga, not ragatmaka, but genuine raganuga bhakti cannot be imitated. Yeah, you either have control of the mind or you do not. Yeah, so the mind plays an essential role in this deep smarana and definitely in spontaneous practice. So it cannot be imitated. So this mental control and meditation, it's not just relevant to the practice of bhakti, but generally the eightfold yoga system, there's different stages of attainment in meditation. They also play an important part in bhakti. So we'll describe what they are. Okay. Yes. Now let me just go back a bit. Okay. Yes. So our acharyas, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, also Prabhupada in Nectar of Instruction, they give 5 stages of absorption in thoughts of Krishna. So there's 5 stages that a devotee will go through. Stage 1, yeah, you go through systematically. If one is chanting without offense, okay. So it begins with hearing, Shravan, and it ends with going back to Godhead. Yeah, the qualification to enter Krishna's Leela forever. Yeah. So it begins, the first stage is Shravan, so we're going to go through that. Yes. Now in spontaneous practice, these stages which we're going to speak about, they're generally cultivated while one is performing japa or in kirtan of the Maha Mantra. Yeah. So devotees who have achieved a great level of ecstatic love, they will engage in activities like, for example, Srila Prabhupada said he was engaged as a world acharya, organizing a worldwide movement. So he could say use the word distracted, but not exactly. It was all part of his bhajan and service to the Lord. But when Prabhupada would specifically sit down to do japa or engage in japa, he will be easily absorbed, totally absorbed when you chant bhajans, etc. Okay, so these stages are cultivated when one is doing one's we use the word bhajan. Okay, so here's the stages. These are the 5 stages of absorption. Now, for those of you who read Maharaj's books, a big part of the Sankalpa Kaumudi is dedicated to these 5 subjects. Okay, so a lot more is written there. Yeah, here he just gives a brief description. Yeah, so the five. So this is going to shed light on spontaneous practice, some more the inner skills that's needed to successfully take it up. Yeah. So these 5 stages are Shravan, Varana, Smarana, Apana, and Sampatti. So the beginning is hearing. So devotees hear, they're going to hear the philosophical truths about Krishna. Yeah. Sambandha, then Abhidheya. Yeah. They're going to hear about Krishna's form, his pastimes, and associates. This is the stage of Shravan. Yeah. So, and they hear Krishna's holy name. So it's called Shravanadas. Now, when they become kind of fixed in devotional service, then they're going to develop a taste for Krishna's named pastimes, and because of that taste, they're going to chant without offense. Yeah, or because of the chanting without offense, then they develop taste. Yeah. Then they're going to identify very much as Krishna's servant, rather than identifying with the body. To a large degree, they're going to identify themselves as Nitya Krishna Das, Krishna's eternal servant. Yeah. Now, after Shravandas, this Varandas, now at this stage they will accept the specific or practice. In other words, they desire to follow the Ragatmaka, those who are the residents of Vrindavan. And they go further than just being Krishna's servants. They accept themselves as followers of specific devotees in Vrindavan. So that's called Varana, where they accept that that is my direction. I am a cow, I'm attracted to cowherd boys. I'm attracted to the Manjaris. Yeah. Varana. And from that stage on, that will be within their heart of hearts in their development of Krishna consciousness. That's the direction that they are going in. So this is something which Maharaj brings out here, which is something sometimes devotees in general, not really, without doing a thorough study of Prabhupada's books, sometimes we think that it's just going to all happen, all going to come out the sky and hit. It's going to happen automatically. Everything's going to be revealed. Like one day I'm going to sit down and chant japa and I'm going to develop bhava and prema. No, it has to be cultivated. There's these different stages that one actually goes through. Yeah. That's why they hold Sankalpa Kaumudi. This book again is about the different stages and the different determinations that's needed. Okay, so we have Sravana, then we have Varana, and then Smaran. This has 5 stages. Smaran has 5 stages, and that's the next slide. Okay, but for now, Smaran, where one has genuine attachment. Um, One is able to remember the Rajrasis and Krishna. So that's the stage of Smaran. Yeah. And then Apana, this is the stage of when one achieves bhava. Okay. And then Sampatti means basically going back to Godhead. Okay, so we have Sravana, Varana, Smaran, Apana, Bhava, then Sampatti. Now, back here on this stage here, this, as we mentioned, this Smaran has 5 stages, and that's what's mentioned here. Now, this is the part which you'll find in other yogic practitioners, other meditation schools. They will speak about these different stages. Of course, their object of meditation is generally void or something is not Krishna. But the development and the ability to engage in Smarana of Krishna develops in the same way for someone following Bhakti. So we have remembrance. Within the stages of Smarana, the first one is called Smarana, okay? Don't get confused about that. Yeah, it's all called Smarana, but this first is called Smarana, then dharana, dhyana, anusmrti, and samadhi. Some of you who practice meditation might be familiar with these. So this is a development of your japa, if you could put it in one sentence in that way. Yeah. So first of all, smaran. This is the first stage of recollection. Yeah, where this is inexperienced devotees easily broken. Anyone experience that your meditation upon the holy name is easily broken. You're unable to maintain a prolonged meditation. That's the first stage. Yeah. And that could be a whole subject. I mean, I did a couple of classes on attentive and inattentive sadhana, where and in the speaking to one friend of mine, he often points out how today's world makes it's sucking away the ability to engage in prolonged smaran, which can be a great obstacle in our devotional development. You know, TikTok, you heard of TikTok brain? You're scrolling and it doesn't do us well. Actually, all this modern, these things, TikTok and what else is it? YouTube, whatever things is there out there. Okay, yeah, with attention span.
AI as well.
Huh?
I think say AI is sort of reducing the ability to concentrate as well.
Yeah, yeah. So we should be careful how we interact with the so-called modern technology. That it's not destroying our ability. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it where devotees are sitting chanting japa and they're scrolling on their phone in the other hand. So, point I'm trying to make out here is that we should really want to be careful because the ability to engage in deep absorption and smaran is vital for us to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So anyway, so Now, if one is making an effort to fix one's mind, one's gonna purify, the heart's gonna become a little bit more purified. And then one should experience that there's some preliminary absorption where your mind is relatively free by the strength of the holy name from distraction. You can chant 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, and occasionally the mind wanders, we bring it back. But you should be able to experience after one week, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Now, if we're progressing nicely, we should have more ability to become more absorbed. Yeah, more absorbed for longer periods. So that's called dharana. Yeah, that's where, yeah. So this is a stage where remembrance proceeds relatively uninterrupted. Yeah. Now, when it's uninterrupted, it gains momentum, and then it becomes concentrated, and that's the next stage. That's dhyana. Yeah. So you got concentration, more, then that goes deeper, and then there's dhyana. Dharana moves to dhyana. So that's where it's sometimes described like when you pour honey from a jar, it pours uninterrupted. So this is an effortless flow. That there, then it moves into when it's concentrated, then it so dhyana, then it moves into anusmrti, which is constant remembrance. Yeah. Then the final stage is samadhi. Now, samadhi doesn't mean you're walking around in some type of trance all day. You reach samadhi, you can't see traffic lights, you can't. No, samadhi means the ability to like sit down during one's meditation and completely forget about their body and their external surroundings and be completely absorbed. Yeah, nothing disturbs them. That's called samadhi. And again, Maharaj speaks about this in Sankalpa Kaumudi. He gives some examples. Yeah. So samadhi, this is where if devotees, if their body's tired, they're so deeply absorbed in the object of meditation that they're not tired. They rise above the bodily completely. They forget they forget they even have a body. Yeah. They don't, then when they come out, they realize where they are again. Oh, I'm here. Okay. You understand? That ability is called samadhi. Now that's the stage you have to achieve before you obtain bhava as well. So we have lots of work to do, and we do get plenty of practice. Those who've taken vows to chant the holy name, those who initiated, we chant 16 rounds a day. So every day we get to practice this. So hopefully, by the grace of the holy name and the effort that we put in, then we're going to be able to see this ability to be more absorbed. But of course, it can be quite elusive as well, because Krishna is a person. So it's not mechanical as well. It's not like mechanical. Prabhupada in one purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, describes not by a mechanical process of hearing and chanting that one contains success. So what I'm trying to say is that generally most devotees, like what we're experienced or what we're explaining here, is a progressive going up. But our experience may not be going up. It may be like this: go down, then go up, go down, go up, go down, 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 down. Then we come up again. But the idea is, I'm trying to explain it, but the idea is with the dips and dives that we go through, hopefully it starts slowing down. And gradually we can make more advancement. Even at this stage, still there may be some dips, but we've reached this stage, so we go up. And then there may be, at this stage, there may be some more challenges may come. Different anarthas will be revealed. It gets really subtle. Like there's anarthas which we're not ready to see yet. We have to wait 5 years, 6 years, 10 years before Krishna's going to show us what. But it's not as if we go right down again. We're just on this platform and we're dealing with a different level of purification. And we may dip, but then we go through that, we come up. You understand? So, although this process, in one sense, what we're describing is quite systematic, the actual experience of everyone will be completely different. Although it has this progression, the personal application will be very, very personal to each and every devotee. Yeah, the different stages that they go through. Yeah. Any questions on this? Yeah, Balanima.
Very well. So I know something you said really struck out to me, which is that the ability to focus comes by Krishna's grace. And I
Yeah,
know that Prabhupada sometimes says how Astanga very much depends on the mechanical positioning of the practitioner. Like they're very good at, doing an asana or getting in a certain position or breathing technique, and then
yeah.
they can advance. But the bhakti yogi uh, is dependent on Krishna. So earlier on, you were saying how our ability to focus, on our japa or our sadhana is really important for us to advance. So
Mm.
is it that we're sort of depending on Krishna to advance? Like, I, just we can't really do it on our own. We have to just ask Krishna every time to help us to focus, or can we actually do something ourselves to improve that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that highlights the difference between the bhakti yogi and the jnana yogi, for example. They're struggling on their own. Yeah. But devotees, their struggle invokes the mercy of Krishna. So ultimately, we're dependent upon Krishna. But we want to be fully conscious of the different stages of Krishna consciousness and want to achieve these different stages. But everything, as I was mentioning, is not mechanical. Everything is dependent upon Krishna. Now, Krishna is going to bestow his grace and mercy when he sees the tiny jiva doing his best. I'm sure, have you ever experienced this where you're chanting japa and you're really trying to concentrate, you can't concentrate, but you're trying. You don't give up. You keep trying. Then all of a sudden, poof, all of a sudden you're able to concentrate and you can have a wonderful japa where you don't feel qualified to experience. That comes because you've sincerely been trying. You know, I think Vaisheshika Prabhu, he explains that chanting japa is like you're trying to break something. You're not trying to break a coconut, bang, 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 bang. It's like that japa. You're trying to somehow or another, you're determined to get that absorption. And we have to be a bit stubborn sometimes, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, there's kind of a breakthrough. One is able to meditate upon Krishna very clearly, the holy name. Now, that mercy, so it's both, like the two fingers in Damodar Leela. So that's very much a relevant point. But it will be that we experience it like this, in these different stages. As we practice japa, we will hopefully go through these different stages, but that's all by Krishna's grace. Yeah. So Krishna, by his grace, we can take up this stage. By his grace, we can get to this stage. By his grace, we can get to this stage. By his grace, we can get to this stage. And by his grace, we can get to that stage. So it does play a very relevant role for the bhaktas. That's why we should be quite encouraged because Krishna's on our side. Yeah, we're trying our best. So, and Krishna's on our side. Yeah. It's not like the yogi where they're more or less struggling on their own. Mm. Is that okay, Bala? Nimai Prabhu?
No, thank you, Prabhu. That's
Yeah,
very helpful. Thank
very
you.
good question as well. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. So then samadhi, okay? Okay. So that was in elaboration on this stage, Smarana. Okay. If you want, Prabhupada speaks about this in the purple, I think, text 7 of Nectar of Instruction or text 8. He speaks about these stages. He's quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Yeah. Yet nama rupi charidadis sukirtanano smrityo kramena vasana manaso niyoja. The purport to that verse speaks about this. So it's not coming out of nowhere. It's coming from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada quotes it there in the Nectar of Instruction. Okay. Any questions? Dhruva Maharajji? He's in Samadhi. All right. We're not feeling discouraged, thinking, oh, it's impossible. We're all feeling encouraged. Yes, we should want to know. Yeah, we want to know which direction we're going in, and we want to know the map, isn't it? If you want to get somewhere, you want to. Well, now we got the what do you call it? We got the sat nav, but we want to make sure we know where we are going, in our spiritual development. Okay, next slide. Okay, now the transition to spontaneous devotional service, it may happen and as a result of sadhana from a previous life. It may happen from the sadhana in this life, or it may happen when your regulative practice is matured. And we spoke about that a little last week. All right. So how does it take place? It takes place, in these three ways. Jiva Goswami gives an example. This is from the Bhakti Sandarbha of the practicing from one life to the next. So he gives example of the Vrishnis and the Sadhana Siddha Gopis. Now there's different groups of gopis. One of the groups of gopis who reached the stage of a perfection and entered into Krishna's pastimes was a result in a previous life of their practice of sadhana, Raganuga sadhana, obviously. Yeah. And they attained perfection. Yeah. That was their practice from previous lives. So it gives that example. Okay. So by dint of their devotional development, they appeared in Krishna's pastimes. Yeah. Now, this will be Bhoma pastimes, Krishna's pastimes on earth. Yeah. Then they will develop, from there they develop different stages of prema, different stages, higher stages of prema, sneha, etc., which their attraction matures. Yeah. Then in the next life they go back to the place of perfection. Okay. Now, this transition from regulative to spontaneous practice, Maharaj mentions it's fascinating because it does go through the same. It's not, you cannot just barge into the spiritual world. Obviously, it goes through different stages. Now, these stages may be over 1, 2, 3, 4 lifetimes. It may happen in one lifetime, but it all goes through these same stages. Yeah, it can be in one or it can be in many lives. Now, the transition that takes place in one lifetime. So Jiva Goswami here describes, let me just read this here. Initially, devotees at the stage of practice are under the jurisdiction of scriptural injunction. Okay, that's called Vaidhi Sadhana. Okay, we know that by now. Then, as they hear Srimad Bhagavatam and associate with advanced devotees, they hear 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, they hear from devotees who have such attraction. they also have an interest in spontaneous practice. This interest awakens within them. Yeah. Now, with purity of heart, that eagerness will become stronger. Yeah. Now, Jiva Goswami Maharaj then quotes Jiva Goswami, which calls a mixture of spontaneous and regulative service. Okay, it's getting quite technical. Remember last week we're speaking about regulated devotion and we're speaking about spontaneous devotion. Do you remember we mentioned that it's not as if one is always in one or the other? There's generally a mixture. Okay, so we'll just go through that again, what that actually means. So when there's ruchi, when there's real taste, um, that influence, that ruchi or that natural attraction, that's going to suppress the regulative mood. It's natural. They're naturally attracted. Their heart's dancing forward. Their heart is attracted. That's what's moving them in their devotional practice. It's not trying to avoid, or it's not, they're not obsessed with the rules and regulations. That's not what's pushing them forward. What's pushing them forward is this natural attraction that they have. Yeah. So now I'll just directly quote from Bhakti Sandhava. Therefore, in some situations, it is appropriate to practice Raganuga Bhakti mixed with Vaidhi Bhakti. Okay, what does that mean? Let's read on. He adds that even very advanced devotees sometimes display such mixed devotion in order to benefit and guide the general populace. Okay. So, yeah. Let's see. Yes. For instance, so devotees do have the Gayatri mantra, the Gayatri mantras. There's the Gopal mantra and the Kamadev mantra. That's specifically there for enhancement of this spontaneous attraction. Okay, so I won't say the Gopal mantra, but it's here, Maharaj. So it's a means of meditating on Krishna, the Gopal mantra, for example, of Krishna's captivating his devotees with the sound of his flute. Okay, so someone at the stage of the mixed stage of Vaidhi, it kind of looks like this. My spiritual master has given me this mantra. By following him, I will go to Vrindavan and serve Krishna as his companions do. You follow? So by following him, that's Vaidhi. It's not your natural attraction. Yeah. So that means that regulative attraction that you do have will generally evolve into a spontaneous attraction. Do you follow? So it's mixed. Like you may hear in these classes about remembrance of Krishna and Smarana and Krishna's pastimes. Oh, I heard that this in this book. Oh, we should do like this. Okay, let me do like that. That's called Vaidhi. But it's good because you're approaching the subjects which will attract you naturally in a due course of time with the requisite purity of heart. Okay. Now, we also mentioned this as well. So that's the one in the present life we just spoke about. Okay. Now, Bhava Bhakti after regulative practice has matured. Now, there's a third way which we have spoken about before, where the transition from regulative to spontaneous takes place without cultivation. Okay, you ready for that? So, how does the transition from regulative to spontaneous take place without cultivation? Now remember, we're discussing a specific type of Raganuga sadhana. Now some devotees will not, for one reason or another, they won't feel comfortable, they won't be particularly attracted to this what we're describing here. They're happy just to serve the mission. they're absorbed in their particular service. Now, if they're really following nicely and sincerely, they're going to go through the different stages of purification. They're going to, you're going to nishta, then you got ruchi, then there's a shakti. And when they hit bhava, everything will manifest at that stage for them. The attraction to Vrindavan and the Vrajavasis will erupt like a volcano at that stage. So you had these two paths. Yeah. Now, the general direction that you're going to see that Prabhupada gives is this one, is absorb yourself in your spiritual practice. Yeah. But Prabhupada also speaks also about the development of this Raganuga as well, if you read and study carefully. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. Everyone's all clearly understood as best as we can. Yeah, it's quite a deep subject, isn't it? Okay. Now oh my God, it's 7:05. That's not fair. Or it's five past, here it's 7:05. Can I take a few more minutes of your time? Or actually, I better not actually, because this is an important subject. Lord Chaitanya and spontaneous devotion. So let's stop there. I don't want to just hammer through this in 2 minutes. Okay. Okay, so thank you everyone for your kind attention. I hope it was not too much. I hope it's inspiring. It's good to hear about these different stages of Krishna consciousness and what it actually means. So I hope it's helped in some way. So thank you for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada, any final comments? Just Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's nice to know what to pray for actually as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, praying for this. When will that day be mine when I can be absorbed? When, oh, when?
Mm.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare
Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.